plant queens, welcome back to my channel. I'm Saab, and today we are going to be taking a look at some expensive or rare Hoyas. So by rare, I don't mean commercial. I don't mean they're rare in the wild. I mean they're commercially rare. So these are Hoyas where the demand is so high that sellers are pricing them at higher prices because of that. Just a bit of a disclaimer that these Hoyas may be expensive for me but not for you, because it really depends on where you live. And where I live, it might be really difficult to source, but for you it might be easy, which is good for you if that's the case. So just keep that in mind, that if you see something and you don't think it should be in this video, these are just my personal experience with these Hoyas. So the fun part about today is I will be telling you if I think it is worth it or not to buy these Hoyas. And I will be gauging that based on my experience with the plant, whether it's a fast or a slow grower, and whether I think the high price tag justifies, the satisfaction you get out of growing these plants. So I won't be rating them based on, say, if they can propagate enough that you can get back your investment quickly. Not a kind of investment houseplant thing. Just as an indoor plant grower, if I would say that it's worth it or not. With that said, I want to start with one that I actually want to propagate in front of you. So this will be kind of a two-in-one video. I'll show you how I propagate some of these Hoyas, especially the smaller ones. Now this first Hoya, if you are into Hoyas at all, you will be familiar with this one because it's one of those really sought after Hoyas, and I'll just show you. Here it is. It is a Hoya bella Louis Bois or a Hoya bella varigata. So it is basically a variegated Hoya. And anyone who sees this who's not into Hoyas will think like, what's so special about that? It's just a variegated bella, which is what I used to think as well. But then I really was very happy and fortunate to be able to get this for free from my friend. I'll put her Instagram up here in case you want to check out her gorgeous Hoyas. So yeah, I did not purchase this, but I do know that the prices for this are really crazy high. And yeah, I think something for as little as a top cut, maybe 2 to 4 leaves, would go for a few thousand pesos, which is a few $100s. In terms of caring for this, it's pretty much exactly the same as a Hoya bella, which if you own one or you have owned one, you will know that it's very easy. It's not very demanding at all in terms of sunlight or humidity or anything like that. It is a little bit thirstier than other Hoyas. I would say I do have to water it more often. The leaves get wrinkly, and that's how you know you have to water it. But I do try to not let it get to that point. Like if I see that the pond, because this is in pond, if I see that that's dry, then I go ahead and give it a good drink. And I do water it with hydroponics nutrients because it is in pond. It doesn't get the nutrients from the substrate. And it seems to be really loving that. And although it is a slower grower than the Bella, it's still faster than your regular Hoya, like the big thick leaf ones. This is faster than those, if that makes sense at all. So I just want to propagate this because I want to trade some and maybe sell some so I have Christmas money. But how I will do that is just in between these are called the internodes, and where the leaf comes out of, that is called a node. So you want to cut below that because that is where the root will come from, like where the node is. So I'm going to cut this for you. How do I do this in a way that you can see it? Let me see. So poof. Wow. And it just fell. So now we have this cutting, but this has way too many leaves for it to be able to sustain itself. So I want to cut it into individual nodes instead of cutting off leaves because I feel like that's a waste. So I will just do that again here. So now we have this tiny baby leaf here. And I want to keep doing that until here. Okay, so now we have this other cutting, and then we have this top cutting. So I don't want to cut where the baby leaves are up there because that won't make it. Like the baby leaves are still growing, and if you've owned Hoyas, you would know that the baby leaves are really sensitive. They will fall off if you propagate, like if you cut them there, that they won't make it. They'll just fall off and it'll be a dead cutting. So that would be a waste. So I'm gonna keep it like this, and I'll just do that to this one as well. So in terms of pests, it does tend to attract mealybugs a little bit, but mealybugs are very easy to deal with, so I don't really mind. They don't really bother me. And I just have to answer the question of whether I think it is worth it or not. I will get back to those cuttings later because you will see that there is white stuff coming out at the end of it, and I do not want to stick a fresh cutting into my substrate because the chance for rot is higher and I want to avoid that. So we'll let those air dry throughout the course of this video, and at the end of it I'll put it in one of my prop boxes and show you how I do that. Anyway, so do I think that it is worth it? So people are selling cuttings maybe this size, at least where I'm from, for about 6,000 pesos. I've seen it go for this tiny thing. I will put the US dollar equivalent down below because I can't do quick math. But yeah, so that much money for this tiny thing. And while it is a fast grower, I would say it'll take a few months for you to be able to sell it and make back what you invested. But I think that's a bit too much to pay for this because yeah, it is a fast grower. So with enough demand, I'm sure there will be more of this in the market someday. Like we've seen this happen with some plants where it has started to saturate the market so much that the prices go down. Like for example, the Adansoniae variegata, the prices for that are starting to come down. And I'm not saying it'll be fast or anything like that, but if it'll hurt your wallet to buy this plant, I say just wait a bit longer because it's going to flood the market eventually. And I don't think it's worth it right now to pay that much for such a small Hoya that, to be honest, a lot of other Hoyas are much prettier than this. I understand the appeal of this Hoya, but I just don't think it's worth that much money. Okay, whew, we got through that first one and we chopped her up too. Let's pick another one, maybe a bigger one. Okay, so this next Hoya, I'm already going to tell you, it's my absolute favorite Hoya of all time, without a question. And I used to have a hard time coming up with an answer to that question, but now that I own this, I mean, I've owned this for a while, this has been my answer ever since I got it. So this is a Hoya Sarawak. Wow, that looks amazing on camera. Look at that. It's a bit dusty. I'm sorry. This just grew so perfectly. This is its newest leaf. A very dusty new leaf. You can see how beautiful and chunky it is. So I have no idea how much this costs in other countries. If this is actually cheap where you come from, please let me know in the comments below. That would be very interesting for me. But in the Philippines, this used to be much more expensive. I actually had to import this with a friend and had to rehab it and everything. So I do have some sentimental attachment to it. But now it's more readily available, although it is still a little bit expensive. However, it is a fast grower. I've propagated from this before. Hold on, I'll get the propagation. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I've propagated from this before. Here is the propagation. This is for my friend actually. And this used to be just 2 leaves. And over the span of maybe a month or 2 months, it's grown into this gorgeous thing. So you can get a lot of plants from this because it is a faster growing Hoya despite it having big leaves. And yeah, I mean, for the price, it's not crazy expensive like the variegated Bella. I would say this is really worth it, especially if you're into your big leaf, juicy, chunky Hoyas. Because look at that. Like, how can you beat that? That's just beautiful. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is probably going to be a little bit controversial for some who really love this plant. But this next one is the Hoya variegata. Oh my gosh, she looks horrible. I've had this plant, believe it or not, for almost 2 years, and this is what I have so far. So I got this back at the peak of its price, I guess. It was very, very expensive when I got it. It was for such a tiny thing. And then it got even more expensive. So that was like crazy watching it explode. And people were paying big money for like very tiny cuttings of this. Kind of like they're doing for the Bella, variegated Bella right now. And I don't know, it's such a slow grower. I get that it's really, really beautiful, especially if you have a big, gorgeous, lush plant. But I don't have that because I can't afford to buy a full pot of it. And a lot of people who own this would agree that it's so freaking slow. It is the worst in terms of growth rate. I'm giving it the best environment I can. It's sitting in my enclosure, my acrylic enclosure, which is like a terrarium as well. And it's growing, like you can see some baby leaves there on the side. But you can see how long it's been in this spot with the amount of algae all over it. Like I have to clean that. But yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's expensive and it's slow. And I don't think this plant is worth it. Like there are other Hoyas you can get for a much cheaper price that won't take this long. I think that you should wait a little bit for the prices for this one to go down as well, just because I don't think it's worth it right now. Sorry for the fans of this plant. It's gorgeous. It's nice. It's a bit too slow for me. Okay, so this next one is a Hoya velosa. I have shown this on my channel before, and if you remember that, then you'll know that it hasn't changed much. But it's still very beautiful. You can see it has super fuzzy leaves. That's not actually dust, that's just fuzz. And the undersides are also very fuzzy. It has this beautiful texture, like abs, I guess, on the leaves. And it's just a really reliable Hoya. It's not too difficult to care for. I haven't really had any pest issues with it or anything like that. The only issue I've had is that it tends to throw out vines, and you really need to put a trellis or something on it because otherwise it won't put out any leaves. Kind of like the problem I keep having with my Hoya wayariai, which is fine by the way. Thank you for all the commenters who were suggesting things for me to do. I ended up putting it on the trellis and it's doing much better now. So I think the same thing is necessary for this one. The vines will just dry out if you don't put a trellis on it. It's kind of similar to the Hoya Sarawak. I actually got them at the same time, so you'll see that the Sarawak has grown much more and I've even propagated from it compared to this one. So it is a relatively slower grower, but it is very fun to watch it grow. Like seeing the baby leaves, I might have like a photo of new leaves coming out. Like they're so fuzzy and so adorable that I can't help but be happy every time it puts out new growth. Plus the price isn't crazy from what I remember, and it is becoming more readily available, at least where I'm from. So I would say that this one is worth it, especially if you're into your fuzzy Hoyas. You'll absolutely love this. It's just a really nice plant. This next one, honestly, I don't think it's that expensive anymore, but I'm going to include it anyway because it was when I got it. And for some of you, if you've been gardening for a while, that might be true as well. So this is my Hoya wayariai or Kentiana varigata. I don't really know which one. This is basically a variegated Kentiana. It's really, really beautiful. You can see the inside is a little bit pink because this is new growth and it's a little bit sun stressed. And the stems are also pink and adorable, which I love. So this is another slow grower, unfortunately. It took me a while to be able to upgrade to this pot. It used to be in a pot like about as small as this, and I only had maybe this much of it. And now I've been chopping and propping it for a little over a year, and I've finally gotten it to this point. The prices for this one did come down already, which means it would be a little bit easy for me to go and buy a new pot of it and just combine it, but I can wait. I'm not gonna spend money unnecessarily when I can just wait for it. It's very easy care. It just needs a lot of light. I give this one direct sunlight, direct afternoon light, so it's quite harsh light, and it seems to be really happy with that because since it has less green on its leaves, it needs more light to be able to photosynthesize effectively. So in terms of humidity and watering, it's very, very easy. You just kind of touch the leaves, and if they don't bend like this, then that means that it doesn't need water yet. And if it does bend or it's a little bit soft or wrinkly, then it's time to water it. Although again, once you get used to its watering schedule, it would be helpful if you could water it before it gets to that point, just because I find that the Hoyas at least don't lose any leaves if you do that, if you water it before it gets wrinkly. I don't have any pest pressures on this plant either, and I just treat it like all of my other Hoyas in pond. So I think overall, based on how low the prices are now, like if you asked me when I bought this at the price I did and during the peak of when it was at its highest price, I wouldn't say it's worth it. But now that it's a little bit more accessible and cheaper, I would say it is. That of course depends on whether it is more accessible for you where you are. And if it is a bit too expensive, I'd say just wait a little bit longer and try to get a bigger pot, because similar to the Hishkiliana varigata, it takes a while for it to grow. If you're patient, then sure, get a tiny cutting and grow it from that. But I recommend getting a bigger pot of it just because it is such a slow grower. Although it is a beautiful plant, I say for me personally, it's worth it. We are down to our last one, and this is one of my favorites as well. Probably my top two. Probably, I don't know. Just because I'm looking at it now, I guess. But this is something a lot of people might have not heard of. I know I never saw this on Instagram or anything like that. I just saw a video on YouTube. One of the plant YouTubers mentioned it, and I was instantly in love with it. And then I was so disappointed to find out it's so freaking expensive. So this is a Hoya Ching gensis. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. A Hoya Ching gensis. Oh my gosh, she's so adorable. She's so lush now. So it has very, very tiny leaves, as you can see. Look at how small those leaves are. That's so adorable. And the leaves are really, oh wow, there's like a bunch of mealybugs there behind it. I have to spray it later. Anyway, the leaves are really fuzzy and small and so cute. Like, it feels like touching little cat paws. I don't know. But it's just really my cutest Hoya ever. I should make a video called Cutest Hoyas, and this would be the only featured one. So it's a very fast grower. I got this, I only had maybe this much of it, like that portion. That's how much I had of it maybe a year ago. And I've propagated from this a lot. I've propagated this so many times, just because I know at this point I should either let it trail or put it on a trellis, and I don't want to do either of those things yet, so I just keep propagating it. And it's very happy where it is. You can see these aerial roots. I do keep this in my enclosure because it is quite pest prone, especially spider mites. Oh my goodness, we had a terrible battle with spider mites with this one. It seems to just really attract those, and because it's so fuzzy, it's really difficult to get rid of them, and you have to keep treating it over and over again. But I was able to get rid of it, so we do have a much better relationship now. Ever since I got rid of the spider mites, it became such a fast grower. And it's easy to propagate because you can see it puts out aerial roots like crazy. You don't have to give it crazy bright light. I give it about medium to bright indirect light, and it seems to be happy that way. So it does need high humidity, and it is very, very expensive. I spent an ungodly amount on just a tiny, tiny piece of this plant. But I was able to grow it to this much, and if I propagate and sell this, I would make my money back, no problem. And because of that, I would say that this plant is worth it. That might not be an opinion that you'd agree with if you don't see the appeal, because not everyone will see the appeal of this Hoya, but I just think it's so freaking adorable. So for me, it is definitely worth the price tag. I don't think the price is coming down anytime soon just because there isn't a big demand for this. As far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, and if you do think that there is a big demand for this in your area. But so far, no one really seems to be talking about this much, and I think that should change because it's so, so cute. I love it. There's no other Hoya like it, in my opinion. So yeah, I think this is totally worth it. So now we've reached the end of this video. I want to show you how I will be propagating the Bella. So I can choose between my oops, is that dangling in front? Yep. Please come back. Please go back to your side. Okay, so I am choosing between my pawn prop box or my sphagnum moss. I do have some ching and gensis in here actually. Try to show you. If you see there on the side, these are my ching and gensis. That's a mirabilis and a Kanya Maria. So there's a bunch of tiny Hoyas in here. So I think it's a little bit full. I will just use my other pawn prop box. Okay, I mean, I think there's space in here. I only have a few cuttings in here. There's a lot of space in the bottom. So I would preferably air dry these a little bit longer, but I mean, it's the end of the video. I said I'd show you, so I might as well just stick it in here. So I literally just stick them in the pawn. Let me just do that and I'll show you what it looks like after. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You can see them there. Sorry, I can't tip it over so much, but you can see them there. They're just sitting there. And I leave this closed pretty much all the time. I just usually check on it maybe once a week to see if it needs some watering. And just put a very small amount of water because you do not want there to be a pool of water because it will cause your cuttings to rot. So I will just leave it back where it is. It's sitting by my window, which gets a lot of direct light in the afternoon, but it's a little bit shielded from that by other plants. So I would never give cuttings without roots direct sunlight because that usually causes them to burn, in case you want to do this as well. And after a week or two, it should have some roots already. And yeah, I will just plant it, move it to its own substrate, to its own tiny pot after it starts giving me new growth, just so I know it's already strong enough to withstand the transition from the prop box to my tiny pot. And I think that is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I am at Marble Queen on Instagram in case you want to DM me any of your questions, but feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. If you thought that some of these plants were worth it or not, then let me know down below as well. I always love hearing from you. It really does bring me so much joy and always makes my day to read your comments. So thank you so much, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!